Hello everyone, and welcome back to Lorelei Passage, where we're working on the town of Foolgold, or in proper terms, town of Pyrite. I hope you guys enjoyed the last two videos showing the start of this town, doing the most boring part of it in my opinion. I love building on a city once it's been started, but man, I gotta tell you, so many cities get started and then erased just because of that first process of starting the neighborhoods and such with no road network to currently build off of. So, you know, coming up with a theme and everything else is always a bit of a challenge for me some days. So we started out this video by unlocking our second tile. This is all a continuation of that 4-hour build. All three of these videos were captured within a 4-hour time span. So we're gonna run. We unlocked that second tile so we could access the outside access to the railroad. So now we're gonna run the railroad into the town of Pyrite and bring in our first form of transportation aside from driving a car. So I'm just going to extend it across this passage here, and then the railroad that I ran alongside the freeway there is going to come up and conjoin with the bridge that's going to be running over the freeway. And this is going to be a one-way connection. I'm not going to try and do two ways with this, because where this railroad splits is where we would separate passenger railroad from freight railroad. This part's interesting. You see a lot of times in real life how a freeway is built around something like a big bridge like this instead of going straight. And I love the realism that adds to it, because there's always somewhere on a highway going through town or even out in the middle of nowhere where you will see the road have to conform to other means of transportation or even natural barriers. And so it's just kind of fun when you run into this issue like I did with the bridge, where because of the angle it's coming across, the piers that hold it up just would never have the appropriate spacing for me to run the interstate directly underneath of it. So it kind of made a cool little unique design that would be unique to this build, and there will probably be more. I've definitely decided to continue this build. I don't know if I'm going to do it in 4-hour segments, 3 parts at a time, or if I'm going to turn it into how I've done Palm Island and just pop up a video anytime I get a spur of the moment idea to add on to it. But I have already recorded a bunch of footage of the next parts of this build, which I'm going to give a sneak peek to at the end of this video. But let's not jump ahead. Right now we are running the passenger end of the railroad right down to Main Street. And we are just going to have the railroad cut right through town. You know, you see in a lot of cities that do have railroad, a lot of those cities were founded because of the railroad. So you'll have this very nice clean grid that usually winds up getting broken around the railroad, because just like the interstate having to conform to the railroad bridge being there, the grid of a town will sooner conform to the railroad running through it than they would move the railroad. So we're just going to kind of have a nice, decent effect of the railroad running right through town. We're going to build a grid around this. And it's not in a very high traffic area. Even as I expand the city, this part of it is not going to be a super high traffic area. This is still going to be kind of a suburb area, but this grid that I'm building here is going to be for more high density purposes. So we're going to start to get some office buildings, some high density commercial going on in here, and this would just kind of be like your midtown that you would see around a lot of suburbs in most big cities. Now, if we had finished the build with this video, then the area I'm building right now would be downtown. But we're going to continue. I'm really enjoying this build. I'm liking the theme that's really developed with this. It's a lot of times I seem to struggle finding a theme to build off of. I'll look around Google Maps or watch videos of other ideas and stuff and try to just incorporate some other ingenuity into the things I do, while also figuring out my own techniques. But this city really took on a unique theme, kind of like Palm Island did. Palm Island was another one, just 1 out of 10 new cities that I started, and the way that I started that first grid just really clicked and made me just keep expanding it. So now I'm just kind of conforming the grid. Well, I'm not kind of, I am. I'm conforming the grid around the railroad here. Now, there's a bit of a bluff there towards the top of the screen there where you can see I had to have one of my blocks run short. And that's another thing that I love about city skylines is how you can have these little inconsistencies, how they had to break the grid, the road layout to conform to a natural barrier. It's one of my favorite things about it. I'm not one of those who feels like they have to conform their entire city around the topography. It's fun. There are some parts of my city I absolutely love making because it conforms to the topography of the map. So, all of that aside, let's get back to what we're doing here. So I tried to come up with a design to make this bridge kind of unique, kind of stand out to the city. Just something that would be unique to this area. Again, I try to make everything its own destination, its own place. Once cities get bigger, it's kind of cool to have, rolling suburbs that just, huge uniform areas where thousands of people live, kind of like where we started. But then I also like to break it up and have smaller areas that are a bit more unique to their own space. Kind of like how I did this here. So I'm building this kind of basic style grid here, which I actually wound up changing, which you'll see in the next part of this series. But yeah, I just wanted to make a different style grid, and then of course for this midtown area I made a shorter span between all the roads, just to kind of have that kind of compact feel to a bigger place. Like the need to have to build up because the open area is limited. So I'm setting up all these paths. I think I've said it a bunch in the other two videos. Walkability is huge, especially in a smaller city that doesn't have any transit yet. This city is still small enough, even with all the additions in this part 3, that walking across town wouldn't take more than 20 minutes. So I'm really big on the paths. They're a great way to start with some interconnectivity in your cities. And then of course, once you get to about the point where I'm at, where you have over 2,000 people, it's good to start getting some sort of outside transit in, aside from just your roadway. So So like here I'm making this passenger rail run into the city, and then just have a single train station, so it's not, you know, pinging back and forth doing different things. It's just bringing people into the city and taking people out of it. Alright, so now we're building our water lines here. You know, just typical, kind of keeping them under the roads. I'm sure some other folks that you guys have watched play City Skylines on YouTube reiterate the importance of the water pipes being under the road. Okay, so we're getting these paths going. There's a lot of walkability around there. It just kind of conforms to the grid. It's not like the other half of the city where I had a lot of these unique paths running between these unique city blocks or anything. These are just, you know, they kind of mirror the grid pattern we've already put together. And accidentally made everything 4-lane roads, so I had to go and make those a bit smaller. I'm not so against doing cul-de-sacs in cities. As unfavorable as they might be, they are a rather common thing. It's a good way to fill space, to fill real estate, for companies to make money in places that you normally wouldn't be able to build with a through road. So now I'm just putting together the area where our train station is going to be. I put it as close to the railroad as I can get, and sadly the little outbuilding off the back of it makes it to where you can't put it any closer, and I wish I could get it just one square unit closer, but that's okay. We'll make it work with the way that it is. And we did. We made it work. So this is one of those picky things about City Skylines. Sometimes you have to try something 30 different ways to get one outcome that's the same. And sometimes you just have to give up on a connection altogether and find another way around. You know, like in a real city. Now, granted, they wouldn't be able to. It wouldn't be realistic in a real city if they couldn't complete a road because it was glitchy. But you know, other things pop up. Maybe there's utility lines that run underneath there, or maybe it's some sort of protected land, or maybe the land is owned by someone and they don't want a road running through it, even if it's only 50 yards. Where I grew up, we had a church, a really major church for the town, and it was about 200 yards from the main road that ran through town. But somebody owned the property between the church and that main road, so you had to go around the outside of town and up this big hill to get to the church, because the person who owned that land was not willing to sell the land so they could add in a 200-yard stretch of road to get to the church. So it's a real thing. All sorts of reasons why sometimes you can't build a road through even a smaller area. So because this railroad runs through the city, it's not elevated, it's not underground, the roads aren't elevated, it's just running right across the roads, right next to the walkway paths. So I'm putting fences around it. You know, anybody moving here with children would want to know that their kids can go to the park and wouldn't get squished by a train if the parent's back was turned for a moment. So fences, lots of fences around this railroad. So I did say in the very beginning that this city was a vanilla build, besides the map and some trees, but I also wound up using the mid-century modern building style for this district, and I totally spaced it because a lot of the higher density buildings don't spawn that way, so I forgot that that's what we were doing here. So that's one thing that's not part of the original game that you buy. That's part of the downloaded content. But still makes it look great. So you can kind of see what we're going for here. That's a good look over the city, the grid that we made, our sunken freeway with our bridge. It's kind of, this is what we've done so far. So now we're going to start zoning everything, letting everything pop in, and then we'll start doing our landscaping. All the trees. I love planting trees. It's probably my favorite part. So I don't do it right away, but I actually clean up some of the zoning that I put around the railroad tracks. I figured that's something not only noise-wise, but just so that way people can see the trains where they are and they're not just sneaking around corners. I actually backed the zoning layers off away from the tracks here in just a minute and decided to put paths next to it instead, because why put buildings and offices where people are going to be working next to the railroad tracks when instead you could have a path that people working in these buildings and offices could go and walk on at lunchtime or use as a way to get home, and just enjoy the city scenery with this train line running right into the middle of it. It's just kind of another look at what we're doing there. So now we're going to start zoning in this neighborhood. And again, after this video, this next video that I'm going to be putting together for this, I actually destroy this grid and put in something a bit more unique to its own location. Just like the rest of this, I want everything to be its own destination, and so I kind of made more of a private neighborhood along this road here. Only a couple ways in and out, and then kind of an internal setup to it, a centralized market area to provide people living there with jobs, a park, school. But that's all for next video. Y'all just gotta wait. So I'm just kind of watching everything spawn in here. I'm really great at forgetting to switch it over to the cinematic camera when I'm doing stuff like that, but you get the basic idea of what's going on here, even with the toolbar at the bottom. So I'm adding in some city services, fire department, police station, a clinic, and I believe an elementary school. And at one point here, I actually threw down a university. I kept on getting this, you can see right there, there's a couple of them. Companies that keep shutting down because they don't have highly educated citizens. So I actually just kind of plopped down a university on the edge of that suburb, but that's not permanent. I just wanted to get some more educated people in our population, so that way all these companies that I'm trying to historicalize and keep at a certain level from going out of business. Because it was starting to waste a lot of time in this 4-hour build, going through and deleting these abandoned buildings, putting new ones in, waiting for it to pop up, and historicalize it just for its next door neighbor to go out of business for the same thing. So I had to get a couple loans there. Still making decent money with the city, but it's just not quite big enough yet to install all of this infrastructure that I'm putting in here, at least at this fast of a pace. But I knew once it was all in, I'd start to make the money back, and that it wouldn't be a big deal to do that and get the loans. So kind of see what we're going for here. It's basic grid layout. Zoomed way too far out, but I still have faith. You know, like I said, I just recorded all this in a 4-hour time span. I was just playing and hitting the record button. I wasn't thinking a whole lot about camera angles or anything like that. I wasn't even sure if I was going to turn this into a video build yet or not when I was doing it. It wasn't until the next day I was going through and looking at all of the footage that I recorded and decided, man, that would be a good mini-series with what I got accomplished there. So I hope you guys enjoy this kind of content. Always like and subscribe. Let me know what you think in the comments. You know, whether it be constructive or criticism or constructive criticism. Let me know what you guys think. Put a lot of my imagination into doing stuff like this, so getting feedback is always very, very appreciated in all shapes and forms. So I decided, since the city and the map have been named after minerals, I'd probably best be suited to put in some rocks in the city, which I did just there a couple minutes ago. Just kind of a layout of that main street there, just added a lot of grasses, just to form sort of a barrier between Main Street and the rest of the city. So here's a good overview of it. Going to be continuing our landscaping here. But that's pretty much the completed grid for what we've done. So now I'm cutting back those zoned areas, make more room around the railroad tracks. And even things like a railroad track, not a train stop, just a railroad track, can almost appear as a destination, as a unique place. Because, you know, especially these towns that were founded on that stuff, you've got train tracks running in some strange directions through a city that have been there for, you know, 150 years now. So when they decided to build roads there 50 years ago, they built them around the railroad track because it wasn't gonna move. Already starting to get our first train customers in. And now we're just going to put this path together around the one side of the railroad track. Give some walkability to the area. And almost make the train track like a scenic thing to be enjoying walking back. Oh, the trees. You know, in my mindset, so I could go overboard with trees and rocks. It's just my favorite part. So I tend to go overboard with that sort of stuff, but I feel like when you look over most cities, even where I live, where it's relatively dry, you'll still look out over the town and see trees and any other building that's just taller than the trees. So I like a lot of trees. I like a lot of green space. You know, it just seems to kind of fill those awkward voids. Even though I could totally fill them in with some roads, I don't like the concrete jungle appeal of cities. Now, on a realistic sense, there are plenty of cities that are just a concrete jungle. They're just nothing but city until you reach here. But most cities tend to have these sort of awkward spaces like this between areas, and nobody's going to buy to build on. And the city's not going to pay to maintain it, so they put trees. So this is what we got here. Good layout of our design. This is what we did. This was part 3. I hope you all have enjoyed this build. It was a ton of fun to film it, build it, and put it together into a series. So here's a decent overlook of it. I love the uniqueness that it all has. Everything just looks like it belongs where it's at. It's not terribly destructive to the landscape, even though I terraformed almost all of the area where the city is to be flat. It was minimal elevation change. It was just to flatten it out. It was a very realistic venture, I feel like. So this is our sneak peek to the next episode. This is what we turned our new neighborhood into. Limited access with a city center in the middle of it. Added some trees to the interstate, and what you can't see on the map right now was the addition of our first major industry. It's a big farming industry, and yeah, it just came out great. So stay tuned for the next episode. Always like and subscribe, and tune in next time to see more content like this. Take care, everybody.